Good morning, brothers and sisters. This is Keith Thompson, and here we have another Ask Keith segment. And I wanted to answer this question because it's funny. I have a coworker at my job who's going through the same exact thing, and but it's a woman at my job. So we have a question from Mark, and I guess he's a subscriber on my previous channel, my older channel. His question is: My wife of 8 years cheated on me with a coworker, and now wants to come back after I made her leave the home. Should I take her back? I am a Christian and she's not. That's a good question. And that's a sincere concern of a believer. Um, Listen, adultery in the confines of a marriage is probably the worst thing a partner can do. It's terrible. I mean, in the Old Testament, it was considered it was it, if you committed adultery, okay, in the first century, prescribed Leviticus 20:10, capital punishment, okay, death. If you were caught cheating, committing adultery, let's look at Leviticus 20:10. Prescribes capital punishment for adultery between a man and a married woman. And the man that committeth adultery with another man's wife, even he that committeth adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. So you died. Okay, that's how serious this is. Okay. Now today, okay, the question is, can a believer divorce his wife or her husband if they are caught in the act of adultery? Okay, it's a good question. Now, John Piper, his personal opinion is there's no room for that. Um, he's got a good article on desiringgod.com, but he does go into it scripturally, and we see that in Matthew 5:32 says, "But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except on the grounds of sexual immorality makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." So we see in a biblical context that the only way you can divorce a spouse is on the grounds of sexual immorality, adultery. And we see also in scripture that it's due to a hardness of the heart. Okay, God permits that due to the hardening of the heart. So there is grounds for a divorce due to her infidelity. Okay, now the question is that what you want to do? Okay, now even though there is grounds for that based on the sin she committed against you, we as believers are called to forgive. Okay, so listen, I remember watching a sermon excerpt from Tim Conway years ago, and he spoke on this very subject. And as godly as he is as a man of God, even he said that he would have an issue, and he doesn't know if he will be able to forgive his wife in that circumstance. So, listen, if you were to divorce her, biblically, it's on solid ground. Um, but obviously, as a believer, to forgive her and to keep her as your wife would be that would be a great thing. As hard as that is to say, uh, now out in the world, people would call you a fool, but us as believers, us as Christians, that's an honorable thing to do. To forgive your wife, to pray for her, to you know, to stick with her. I mean, it's kind of like Hosea. I was just reading Hosea the other day, and Hosea. I mean, could you imagine being taxed with this? I mean, God outright tells Hosea, "Listen, you're going to marry a harlot. Okay, I'm going to give you a harlot to marry. Okay, a woman who the whole town knows has been sexually immoral, a prostitute. You're going to marry her." Now we know that the book of Hosea is basically a story of Christ and the church. But there's a verse in Hosea 2, verse 7 that says, "I will go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now." And I want to tell you a story of a coworker I had whose wife did this exact same thing. She cheated on him with someone else. She left him, okay, because she thought the grass is greener. Now he was a Christian and she wasn't. This is kind of the same scenario. She left him, and I was shocked. Now I knew him when I wasn't a Christian, so I was shocked that he was sticking by her. He was praying for her, and I was just like, I was lost at the time. I was lost, and I remember telling him, "Man, just divorce her, man. Just cut your loss, move on. There's a whole bunch of fish in the sea." And he was like, and I remember he was telling me some Bible verses, and he wanted to just pray and pray and pray. And I guess things eventually went bad with the guy she had left her husband for. Um, I think he may have become abusive, and so she called one night. She called him crying. He went and picked her up. He brought her back, and to make a long story short, he forgave her. She eventually joined his church, and now I guess they're a saved married couple. So, hey, listen, as Christians, this could be your test. This could be God's test for you. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you what you should do. I'm just answering the question. And I hope I've done that. I will pray for you and your wife for whichever decision you choose to make. And I hope I've answered your question. If you have any other questions, hit me up. Thank you for listening.